death, fear, and despair stenching the air. Dead, rotting corpses littering the floor of this large chamber in a tomb long forgotten to time. In the rear of the chamber are two Sith apprentices battling a possessed human, fighting for their right to live and wanting to slay this horrid figure before them that threatens their existence. The skin on the face of this human before them is peeling in certain areas, purple veins covering the area around his eyes, and a smile that can send shivers down even the most sadistic Sith in the Empire. One arm extending outward, the possessed individual sends out a wave of malicious dark side energy. The Sith apprentices immediately react and gesture with both their arms, forming a cross to block the oncoming assault. Cyrus and Isaac get pushed back several feet towards the center of the chamber. If it weren't for the protective force shield that they were taught at the Sith Academy to instinctively put up whenever met with force powers, they would have been thrown backward like rag dolls, and quite possibly killed by the sheer strength of the push. Holding out their ignited lightsabers, they ready themselves to issue a counterattack, but are quickly met with the sound of rushing footsteps from their rear. They try not to take their eyes off the opponent in front of them, but they can feel the danger quickly approaching. Turning around, they see Verbata and Lakasha lunging towards them with an animalistic rage. Taking a step to the side, Cyrus dodges Verbata and Lakasha, who are thrusting themselves forward to get into melee combat with him.
General, what is the matter with you? Pull yourself together. And Lek, are you high on spice or something?
The human apprentice, preoccupied with dodging the attacks from his companions, he is unable to fully perceive what is happening to Verbata and Lakasha. Isaac, however, comprehends the dark sorcery taking place, as it's a form of possession that Sith spirits would enact, to latch their consciousness to a host in order to sustain their own ethereal existence. Dark side spirits are either bound to a location or must bind themselves onto an object for them to remain in the corporeal world. There are several cases of spirits possessing individuals, draining the life force of the host to sustain the spirit's own consciousness. Alternatively, it would otherwise cease to exist as the dark side specter goes to the void. The last vestige of who it once was would be snuffed out of existence.
Cyrus, they are possessed. I'll try my best to use my battle meditation to free them, but...
Isaac trying to warn Cyrus of the danger when dealing with Sith possession, he is abruptly interrupted by the scrawny male human who is taken over by an ancient Sith Lord. The young man before Isaac now identifies himself as Lord Crawd, and the being who was once known as Caden has now vanished and been consumed by the malicious spirit who has been trapped on this world for centuries. Lord Crawd. Moving forwards, he goes to repeatedly attack Isaac with a series of flurries and quick jabs to the face, wielding a spectral Sith blade that has a striking resemblance to the great sword that Kem Val currently is in possession of. Leaping into the air, the Mirialan Sith apprentice does a flip overhead and attempts to chop off the round skull off his aggressor using the hawk bat swoop technique used in the fourth lightsaber form known as a Taru. Lord Crawd bats away the attack with the spectral blade, and Isaac lands on his feet several feet away. Not being entirely surprised that his lightsaber was blocked, as he had heard the tales of objects being imbued with the Force to withstand the cutting power of a lightsaber, and especially since whatever the ghostly blade that his opponent is wielding must be made of pure dark side energy. The tattooed Mirialan tries to take a brief moment to harness his rage and anger to burst forth Force lightning from his fingertips. He unfortunately isn't given a reprieve as the ghastly figure before him continues the assault of numerous more slashes, thrusts, and overhead strikes to kill him outright. Trying to simultaneously sense with the Force whilst parrying the relentless attacks from Lord Crawd, Isaac can perceive that Cyrus is having a particularly difficult time trying to dodge the brutish efforts of Verbata and Lakasha attacking him in a frenzied rage with their bare hands. Isaac wishing He could merely take a few seconds to perform his battle meditation, endeavoring to lift the plagued minds of Verbata and Lekasha. He tries to extend his senses to the best of his ability to see what Rakdaya and Kem Val could possibly be doing instead of helping with the current situation. Much to his dismay, the ancient Sith Lord is disrupting his ability to use the Force to its full extent when battering him with unabated attacks from the spectral blade. With no choice but to focus in the here and now, he returns his attention to the current fight and takes command over the Force to leap, dodge, and parry many of the hits that his opponent is sending his way. At the entrance of the chamber, Kem Val and Rakdahia are having their weapons drawn as Iroh exudes a menacing aura that is not his own after touching the artifact in the center of the room.
What has this damn alien gotten us into now?
Translation. The dead have been disturbed, and now we will be punished for trespassing on their resting place by having our souls be eternally damned. Translation. The dead have been disturbed, and now we will be punished for trespassing on their resting place by having our souls be eternally tormented.
Jumping high into the air and moving several feet horizontally, Iroh ignites his lightsaber mid-air and prepares to do a powerful downward slash, using the momentum of the jump towards Rakdahia. HK-50 quickly responds to the threat by drawing his light-repeating blaster rifle and putting a handful of blaster bolts square in the chest of the Echani in mid-air, sending him backward to hit the floor.
Commencing assassination protocols level 1.
After 10 seconds of observing Iroh lay on the floor, seemingly incapacitated, they begin to move closer, but are surprised to see him spring back up on his feet, and not a second later, the Echani runs towards them with his blade held high to wage battle. With his sight still set on Rakdahia, Iroh runs towards him with pure rage, but is slapped by a strong backhand from Kem Val, disorientating the Echani slightly and stopping him mid-stride. Although most beings would be completely knocked senseless from a hit by an 8-foot-tall monstrous Dashad. Iroh takes it head-on and then sets his attention towards Kem Val, moving his blade horizontally in order to cut the Dashad completely in half. He is met with the lightsaber of Rakdahia, blocking his attempts to kill Kem Val. Iroh is soon headbutted right after by the 8-foot-tall beast, bringing the Echani to his knees as HK-50 is aiming a carefully placed shot at the cranium of the bewitched Sith apprentice. Dodging out of the way at the last possible instance using his reflexes enhanced by the Force. Iroh tilts his head backwards when the singular blaster bolt trails just inches away past his face, and he then proceeds to roll sideways as Kem Val is doing an overhead slash at the last position where the Echani was kneeling only seconds earlier. Before he can even get up, he blocks an attack coming from his right side by Rakdahia. And then, noticing that the Sith Pureblood's second lightsaber blade is also coming in from the other side to trap him between the two red blades, he uses his brute strength to push away the blade to his right and barely manages to escape a swooping strike from Rakdahia's offhand saber. Before he can even get up, he blocks an attack coming from his right side by Rakdahia. And then, noticing that the Sith Pureblood's second lightsaber blade is also coming in from the other side to trap him between the two red blades, he uses his brute strength to push away the blade to his right and barely manages to escape a swooping strike from Rakdahia's offhand saber. Clambering to his feet, Iroh manages to stand up straight and takes a high guard stance with his blade high overhead.
You have become quite the nuisance, you filthy alien. You've compromised yourself by succumbing to an artifact's influence. We might as well put you out of your pathetic misery.
Translation. I shall now feast on the flesh of this pale morsel. Gleeful statement. I have been wanting to test my assassination protocols on Sith for quite some time. Liquidating this little angry meatbag will be quite the joyful experience.
At the rear of the chamber, Isaac is still in an intense lightsaber battle with the ancient Sith Lord who is still possessing the frail human known as Caden. Utilizing his Ataru lightsaber techniques to use movement as the primary offensive and defensive strategy when dealing with lightsaber users, Isaac barely manages to dodge out of the way when the large ethereal blade that Lord Crawd conjured almost slices him completely in half at the waist. Leaping backwards 5 feet, Isaac tries to survey the battle once again, trying to seize an opportunity to use his battle meditation to assist his allies. Trying to pierce through the darkness in this area is nearly impossible, and he resorts to reaching out with the Force, to once again attempt to get the full picture of the events unfolding in this area brimming with dark side energy. Effortlessly commanding the power of the Force due to the potency of dark energy in this area, he can now fully perceive everything transpiring. 20 feet to his right, Cyrus is defending against Lakasha, and Verbata assaulting him with their bare fists. The human Sith apprentice, reluctant to strike down his companions due to their usefulness, and only able to guard against their attacks for the time being. Reaching out further, he can sense a strong presence towards the entrance of the chamber, something familiar but distorted. Focusing on that particular individual, he can feel the dark malevolence exuding from that area. Hatred, rage, sadistic pleasure, ancient, powerful, and the Emperor. The Sith Emperor was suddenly here, in this ancient and forgotten place, but why would he particularly be here? And why would he be attacking Rakdeya, Kemval, and HK? Using all of his willpower to pierce the veil, Isaac uncovers a portion of the truth and soon realizes the horror. Somehow through the vast expanse of space and time, the Emperor was able to seize control of Iroh's mind and trapped him in mindless servitude, using the young apprentice's once-controlled emotions and amplifying them tenfold, unleashing the Echani on his allies in a frenzy of rage, boiling hatred and a lust for battle. Slightly dismayed by the idea of being enemies with the Emperor, he quickly reminds himself of the immediate danger before him and returns his attention to Lord Crawd. Noticing that his opponent stepped several feet backward, Isaac realizes that Lord Crawd gave him time to survey the battle. Since the Mirialan is only an apprentice, it takes time to observe the world through the lens of the Force, in comparison to someone experienced and well-practiced. A Lord of the Sith or Jedi Master could have accomplished the observation in a fraction of the time, instead of the 20 seconds it took for Isaac to do it, despite him being a prodigy in wielding the Force. Puzzled as to why the ancient Sith Lord ceased his relentless onslaught of melee attacks, the green-skinned Mirialan hastily puts up a Force shield when sensing the building power in and around his opponent. Half a second later, large sparks of Force lightning erupt violently from the fingertips of the frail human and engulf the entirety of Isaac's Force shield, acting like a bubble protecting him from the worst of the damage. Trying his best to push back the trails of purple lightning surrounding him, he can feel the overwhelming power of Lord Crawd striving to snuff out his existence. Some of the tendrils of violent lightning start to pierce past the shield and start hitting Isaac from all sides. Even from just one of the bolts, he felt as though he would pass out from the utter pain of his nerves, being shocked by the wild electricity. As the seconds pass, more bolts of lightning go through the shield, and Isaac pushes back the despair creeping in at the back of his mind. Recalling his lessons from Lord Black, he starts to use the pain from his body when being shocked, and harnesses that suffering to build up power through the dark side of the Force. Building up that pain and suffering to convert into rage, he sends a wave of Force energy in all directions and repels all the lightning in one motion. With that repulse reaching Lord Crawd, it stops him from conjuring the storm of electricity and pushes him slightly backward, but not off his feet. Collapsing to one knee, Isaac is completely exhausted from not only defending and taking damage from the Force storm, but also from harnessing such raw power that cannot be contained or controlled by someone newly initiated into the ways of the dark side. The ancient lord, amused and pleasantly surprised by Isaac not being completely disintegrated or charred by the Force lightning, he takes a moment to comment before delivering the coup de grace. Panting and breathing harshly, Isaac tries to quickly get back up on his feet, but then falls once again to one knee as he hasn't recovered the strength from defending against such a vicious display of Force powers. Lord Crawod can be seen focusing to build up power to issue another storm of lightning to completely incinerate Isaac and end this confrontation in one fell swoop. Seconds feel like minutes as the Mirialan Sith apprentice can see his life flash before his eyes, from his time as a boy running around with his sister playing as spacers traveling the galaxy and defeating gangsters, then being sold into slavery at the hands of the Sith Empire, to the times of him undergoing the grueling trials at the Sith Academy. After years of servitude and endless humiliation, he has finally been given a chance to carve out a place for himself in the galaxy when being apprenticed to Lord Black. But is this really where his story ends? He curses himself for even thinking of that possibility. For why would all his strife and suffering go to waste, so that he can die at the hands of another? Why should his destiny be robbed by another? His anger building and rising like water boiling over in a pot, he uses his fury along with all of his willpower to stand up straight. Meeting the gaze of his aggressor squarely and preparing himself to defend against another blast of the Force storm. Right before Lord Crawod can send another wave of lightning bolts to Isaac, a blaster shot trails through the air and hits the human at the center of his back, leaving a blackened circular mark. Unable to see through the darkness with his naked eye, Isaac can surmise that HK-50 lent some assistance, since the assassin droid's photoreceptors can pick up thermal signatures in the dark and made the correct assessment of who or who wasn't his master. The possessed, frail human doesn't collapse or seem damaged at all, but simply annoyed as he grunts in irritation. The possessed human says, when speaking with the voice of the ancient Sith Lord, he begins once again to start building up power after being interrupted, preparing to deliver another volley of lightning bolts. Luckily now, given an opportunity to regain his strength, Isaac seizes this chance to reach out with the dark side and begins to use an ancient Sith technique to leech the strength off an opponent or area through the Force. Barely able to stand, he not only draws on his own strength, but from the surrounding area of death and carnage to further fuel the ritual of Force drain. Before, only small visible distortions in space would occur when performing this power, but now from the amplification of malevolent energy in this forgotten tomb. Streaks of thin, dark smoke emerge from the dead bodies that litter the ground. The thin veins of smoke converging in and around the Mirialan, his muscles relaxing, his vigor slowly recovering, and even some small cuts begin to faintly heal, leaving noticeable scars. When attempting to drain Force energy from Lord Crawod, Isaac is immediately met with opposition, unable to pierce through the Lord's defenses. He isn't discouraged, since his strength is slowly but surely returning to a point where he could defend against another attack. Possibly even retaliate with an attack of his own, considering the rate of power accumulating from the potency of the dark side in this place. A furious battle of lightsabers ensuing near the entrance of the chamber, the clashing of the sabers illuminating the immediate area in radiant hues of red and white light. The hulking mass of Kem Val pushing downward with his large great sword to cleave the Echni in half, but met with a horizontal block, followed by a quick retreat just before Rakdahya slashes him from behind. The hulking mass of Kem Val pushing downward with his large great sword to cleave the Echani in half, but met with a horizontal block, followed by a quick retreat just before Rakdahya slashes him from behind. Iroh side-stepping to put the Sith pureblood and the Dashad in front of him instead of allowing them to flank him. He is then hailed by a rain of blaster fire from the assassin droid, staying at a distance of 20 feet. Trying his best to deflect the bolts, he isn't adept as Cyrus when it comes to guarding against ranged attacks. and is forced to rush back into the melee to obstruct the droid's line of sight. Iroh sidestepping to put the Sith pureblood and the Dashad in front of him instead of allowing them to flank him. He is then hailed by a rain of blaster fire from the assassin droid, staying at a distance of 20 feet. Trying his best to deflect the bolts, he isn't adept as Cyrus when it comes to guarding against ranged attacks, and is forced to rush back into the melee to obstruct the droid's line of sight. The Achani's saber held high overhead to do a series of repeated attacks to break the pureblood's defenses. Unfortunately for Iroh, Rakdahya is fully aware of the lightsaber form being used against him. The aggressive and relentless lightsaber form known as Juyo, the way of the Vornskar, or also known as the ferocity form. It was a combat form originally designed by the Sith to make full use of hostile and violent emotions to guide the blade in overwhelming the opponent with chaotic and erratic attacks. It was the most demanding of all the 7 lightsaber forms, having a great emphasis on physical prowess when directing the rage of the user. It was even rumored to employ techniques that were originally spurned by the Jedi when developing the first lightsaber form of Shicho. Prepared to defend against Iroh's charge, the pure blood blocks 2 of the threatening overhead strikes with his main saber to distract the Achani from a horizontal slash, swooping in with Rakdahya's second saber. Swiftly blocking the offhand attack, Iroh now leaves himself open for his head to be cut clean off from the pureblood's main hand saber. Rakdahya, applying the assured strike technique used in Juyo to trade the power of an attack for a higher probability to land a hit and end a confrontation quickly. The pureblood moves his lightsaber parallel from his earlier block to sever the pale-skinned Echani's head from his shoulders. With Iroh's reflexes greatly enhanced by the Force, he manages to briskly duck right before Rakdahya's blade touches the skin of his neck, responding when feeling the heat of the lightsaber before it makes contact. Afterwards retaliating with a roundhouse kick to push the pureblood backward 3 feet to put some distance between them. In anticipation of getting attacked by the dual-wielding Sith apprentice, Iroh is caught off guard when the large, muscular 8-foot-tall Dashad does a shoulder charge into him from the side, utterly knocking the Achani off balance to fall on his back. High above, the large, towering Dashad lifts its enormous red blade to deliver the coup de grace. Moving out of the way before Kem Val's blade even starts getting into motion, he rolls away from the 2 melee combatants, avoiding another incident of getting double-teamed. Alas, being removed from close quarters combat gives the assassin droid another opportunity to carry out another salvo of blaster bolts onto Iroh. Rapidly trying to get back up on his feet, he deflects the first shots of plasma speeding towards him. Soon noticing, however, that his movement is becoming more restricted, almost as if he is submerged in water. Every maneuver requiring more effort and strain for even something simple as moving his arm. The now quick reactions and astounding reflexes hindered by some force holding him in place. To the left, Rakdahya can be seen extending one arm directly towards him. With fear quickly gaining a hold of the Achani, Iroh understands that the pureblood is performing a telekinetic technique known as a force bind, exerting the will of the caster onto a victim to restrict their maneuverability or completely halting all their movements. Even when commanding the force to enhance his corporeal form, Iroh has the appearance of moving in slow motion, moving only a few inches at a time. All of a sudden, a bright flash of purple and white light radiates the rear of the chamber. Taken aback, the group pauses to attempt at identifying the source of the light.
Visual assessment. My scanners pick up a heavy concentration of electrical activity near the rear of the chamber. Master Isaac seems to be defending against a storm of force lightning. Tactical evaluation. We must hurry here so we can assist the other meatbags in their struggling battle.
Then kill this fool already.
Rakdahya says under a strained voice as he is having difficulty holding the bewitched Echani in place. Kemval moving in closer to kill the threat. An even brighter flash of dark and white light engulfs the entire chamber and disorients everyone in a stupor when an invisible force pushes them.
What in the name of the Sith was that?
As Rakdahya tries to look towards the direction where the blast came from. His attention split, and his focus using the binding force holding the Echani in place has been lifted.
Translation. He can feel the power of Master Isaac fading after releasing a shockwave. Scanning report. My thermal vision can spot 2 humanoid figures at the location where the anomaly happened. I have a shot on my targeting scopes. I can eliminate one of the targets with a single shot from my repeating blaster, but I cannot know who is who until I gather more data.
Just take the shot, you stupid droid.
Rakdahya saying angrily when pressed for time concerning the high stakes in this battle. Aiming carefully, HK-50 squeezes the trigger to send a single blaster bolt through the air 100 feet away. His thermal scanners able to confirm that the target was indeed hit, but not downed. In the same instance, Iroh leaps across 20 feet in a single bound towards the droid to finish him once and for all with his lightsaber pointed towards it in a thrusting motion. Only a few feet before the Echani's lightsaber makes contact, Kemval catches Iroh's foot mid-air and throws him like a rag doll away from HK. Kemval taunting the Echani into single combat by pointing at him and then doing a gesturing motion for him to come forth. Enraged at the constant interference of the Dashad, Iroh lunges forward without a second thought to attack Kemval with a reckless abandon, performing an assortment of unorganized, irregular, and unpredictable movements, practically throwing himself at the large beast, dancing around as if he were a drunken gundark. After dodging, blocking, sometimes even watching Iroh wildly flail the lightsaber in all directions, Kemval spots an opening to perform another headbutt, putting a halt to the Sith apprentice's feral swordplay by forcibly grabbing his wrist. The Dashad uses its massive head to slam his skull against the Echani, putting Iroh in a daze, who steps backward a few feet, resembling a pirate in a spice haze, not knowing where he is or what is happening. Abruptly, all of the pale-skinned Echani's movements are halted. The familiar binding hold that the pureblood was doing before has once again taken place, restricting Iroh's movements and making him unable to properly move a muscle. It looks as though he is slowly regaining control of his body as he starts to advance with one foot in front of the other and his eyes having a yellow blaze. Picking up speed in his motions, getting ready to charge once again, but is suddenly stopped short by a few well-placed blaster shots at the center of his chest. The assassin droid had let loose a quick volley of blaster fire to put an end to Iroh's advance.
Homicidal statement. You shall now be liquidated, little angry meatbag.
The Echani looks as though he is going to slump face first into unconsciousness, but is completely paralyzed and held into place by Rakdahya's force bind. Kemval slowly approaching with his mouth salivating at the prospect of eating such a powerful apprentice to darkness. Iroh looks defiantly and angrily with yellow eyes blazing with pure hatred. Raising the large Sith sword high above, the Dashad pushes the blade downward with all his strength to do a deep vertical cut at a slight angle at the shoulder of the Echani, penetrating until it reaches the depth of Iroh's stomach. Blood shooting outward like a fountain and completely drenching Kemval in a shower of red fluid. A look of shock and disbelief covers Iroh's face. Looking downward, the Echani mutters something to himself right before the Dashad opens, its mouth wide with its jagged teeth in full display. Then proceeding to wholly bite off the left side of Iroh's face. Leaving the Sith apprentice utterly mangled and disfigured, Kemval uses his foot to push the Echani away to dislodge the blade stuck in the body.
Finally over and done with. It's about time we got rid of the dead weight holding us back.
Demeaning statement. I agree. He was quite annoying with his high-pitched voice and poor combat skills. Strategic evaluation. I highly suggest we regroup with Master Isaac to assist.
Agreed. Come on, you big oaf. You can eat that poor sod later.
Seeing the urgency of the situation, the Dashad complies reluctantly and goes along with HK and the Sith pureblood. Sapping the dark energy from the steep death and gore in this place, Isaac continues to recover his strength in the Force. 10 feet in front of him, he can see the figure of the frail, skinny human becoming more distorted with each passing moment. The human's eyes, having a yellow blaze that radiate in the dark, skin starting to have a sickly, pale color, even wrinkles are starting to form on his face. Vaguely recalling some of the text he had read in the Sith Academy. There were references of a toll some Darksiders would have to pay when concentrating such raw, malevolent power in such a quick amount of time. Usually costing the person's appearance, or in some cases their vitality, to increase an individual's own strength in the Force. Unfortunately, he couldn't ascertain whether or not this rapid change in the human's appearance was due to the original host of the body not being Force-sensitive, and having that much Force energy concentrated in a single vessel without the years of discipline for the body to withstand that level of power, it could result in instability. The second possibility could be if the possession was somehow faulty, and the ancient Sith Lord couldn't control the accelerated degeneration of the vessel's corporeal form, then that could in turn cause such visible degradation. In either case, Isaac was sensing Lord Craod's rising power getting ready to burst forth another storm of Force lightning. The green-skinned Mirialan still hasn't fully recovered, despite the nearly infinite amounts of dark side energy in this place. He couldn't funnel it nearly fast enough, only being able to take small portions at a time. Suffice it to say, he has quite a ways to go when honing his abilities in the Force. To his right, Cyrus can still be seen blocking, dodging, and acrobatically leaping to avoid Verbata and Lekasha's attacks. Reaching out with the Force once more, Isaac goes on to check the status of Rakdahya, Kemval, and HK. Shocked for a moment when realizing the three of them are charging Lord Craod head-on. With the juggernaut Kemval using all his strength to push downward, using the large sword that is nearly identical in appearance to the ethereal blade the decrepit possessed human is wielding. As the momentum of the blade is reaching its apex, it is abruptly halted in place inches away from the back of the human's skull. The deformed human slightly turning to have Kemval in peripheral vision, a sinister smile forms on the disfigured man's face. Then, with a flick of Lord Craod's wrist, the bulky Dashad, weighing 600 pounds, is flung across the room 50 feet towards the entrance of the chamber. Immediately after, blaster shots are being fired repeatedly on the possessed human. Despite the unabating barrage of plasma converging towards the target, Lord Craod puts up a protective shield similar in appearance to the one Isaac used to defend against the Force lightning shot only a few minutes before.
Frustrated commentary. I am unloading all my ammunition onto this worthless meat bag, but it is not making contact with the target's flesh.
He is putting up a Force shield, you blasted droid. Keep up the heavy fire, I'll attack him from the side.
The red-skinned pureblood commanding an annoyance as he is approaching cautiously with both of his lightsabers in a guarded stance, anticipating an attack that could spring forth at any moment. After exactly 100 blaster shots are fired within 20 seconds, and the assassin droid's weapon runs out of ammunition. Rakdahya lunges at the human with both lightsabers coming from either side horizontally. Lord Craod ducking the pureblood's two lightsabers, the ethereal blade does an upward slash, but is blocked by the two sabers forming an X to prevent any more motion. Unable to move it from side to side or vertically, the ancient Sith withdraws the spectral blade towards himself and does a retreating flurry to block any pursuing attacks. The sound of a humming lightsaber getting louder from the rear along with rapid footsteps, Cyrus leaps into the fray, attacking the adversary with a series of saber techniques from a variety of different combat forms. Perplexed as to how the human Sith apprentice could have time to attack him, Lord Croward looks to Verbata and Lakasha incapacitated and cursing as to how they could have been taken out of commission. The answer was revealed as he can spot Isaac with both hands clasped together in concentration, the famous but rare battle meditation. Perplexed as to how the human Sith apprentice could have time to attack him, Lord Croward looks to Verbata and Lakasha incapacitated and cursing as to how they could have been taken out of commission. The answer was revealed as he can spot Isaac with both hands clasped together in concentration, the famous but rare battle meditation, a technique to sway a battle by influencing the minds of the combatants in a conflict, boosting the morale, stamina, and overall battle prowess of individuals. In some cases, when used by Sith, it could terrify an entire army into surrender or turn them against each other by instilling aggression and fear. Cyrus swiftly closing the distance by employing acrobatic feats used in the fourth lightsaber form known as a Taru, making sure to keep the pressure on as to not allow a moment for Lord Croward to breathe or regain a foothold. Switching up combat forms mid-combat, the human Sith apprentice converts to the fifth lightsaber form, Gem So, a variant of the Shien discipline. Whereas Shien would be used for blaster deflection and defensive counterattacks, Gem So was a heavily offensive stance that was meant to overwhelm an opponent's defenses with powerful strikes and parries, followed by immediate counterattacks. With the Lord being overwhelmed, Cyrus raises his red lightsaber to initiate the falling avalanche maneuver, bringing his saber down hard with extreme aggression to bat away the meager attempted block the possessed individual puts up. With the ancient Sith's defenses obliterated, a counter ensues to prevent Cyrus from pressing the advantage. In response, the young human apprentice exercises the fluid riposte technique, parrying the attack and counter-attacking in one swift motion to show retaliation for over-aggression. In any other normal circumstance, a Sith Lord would completely dominate a Sith apprentice, but seeing as the adolescent Sith is invigorated and enhanced by the Mirialan's battle meditation, the combat proficiency could almost rival that of a newly anointed Lord. Trying to acclimate to the new challenger, Lord Craward does 2 aggressive swings from side to side when there is a 3-second delay in the combat, almost as if he is loosening or stretching his muscle fibers. Cyrus moving in once again to perform more assaults using gems, so the ancient Sith is now prepared and does a feint by swinging the large ethereal blade at an angle towards the apprentice's head. With no choice but to dodge, Cyrus steps slightly backward to avoid being hit, but is caught off guard when the sword changes direction just before missing its target. Faster than he could ordinarily comprehend, the human apprentice sees the frail man before him lunge forward with the blade thrusting ahead in order to pierce him in the chest. Thankfully, due to the battle meditation, Cyrus can respond immediately by performing another fluid riposte, swatting away the blade and then countering with an angled downward slash in one motion. Using the momentum of the ethereal blade being shifted from its initial trajectory, Lord Craward twirls his body mid-air to avoid being cut down from the red blade. The human apprentice tries to do a quick side slash whilst the Lord spins in the air, but is astonished to witness him land on his feet, ducking down to avoid the horizontal swing, and then kicks Cyrus back 5 feet with extreme force.
Such incredible Atari maneuvers.
Cyrus thought to himself when watching the decrepit possessed human completely outplay him with skillful dodges and counters. Perhaps the Sith of old were truly in a league of their own, or merely because Cyrus had a long ways to go before reaching that skill level. Even with the invigorating power rushing through him from Isaac's battle meditation, Cyrus can barely keep up with the ferocity of Lord Craward. Unexpectedly, the sound of a lightsaber being swung through the air with full force and almost slashes the upper torso of its intended target, but doesn't make contact when the ancient Sith did a small step forward to avoid being struck down from behind. Rakdaya directly at the rear, he used the swift flank technique employed in Juyo, a method to quickly dash around an opponent to make a quick strike and catch them off guard, similar to certain maneuvers used in Ataru. Pressing on the advance, the Sith pureblood uses the ferocious strikes technique to do a series of repeated heavy attacks to overwhelm the frail human's defenses. And despite the weak frame of this individual, the slender-looking human is empowered by the dark side, giving superhuman strength to combat the ruthlessness of Rakdahya's attacks. Although it initially seemed like the possessed sentient was losing ground and being pushed back, he was actually leading the young pure blood away from his ally so that they could both be within view, instead of being pinned from both sides. Cyrus, preparing himself to leap forward into the fray, he harnesses the power of the force within, and further strengthened by the battle meditation, his confidence rises as he jumps twice in the distance between him and the fight, and sees an opening to do a sideward slash towards the legs of the opponent. Seeing as the Lord is defending against several brutish attacks above the waistline from Rakdahya, he figures his defenses are vulnerable at the low guard.
Just a little closer.
Cyrus said to himself as he closes the distance mid-air, his lightsaber held low and arched back to one side to use the full strength of the lunge to sweep Lord Craward's legs out from under him. Sensing the danger approaching, the lanky, possessed human extends his left arm to do a force push on Rakdahya, and due to the battle meditation, the pure blood was able to react quickly enough to strengthen the force shield just in time before being pushed back 10 feet instead of being hurled backward the way Kem Val was only minutes earlier. 3 seconds after, the ancient Sith stretches out with his right hand to burst out a brief stream of force lightning, which completely halts Cyrus's forward push, resulting in the young Sith dropping straight downward with electricity visibly coursing around his body for a few seconds. Both arms to either side at a 90-degree angle, the Sith Lord begins gathering the dark energies in this chamber. From the death, carnage, and rage in this space, it doesn't lack for raw power to draw from. The air being observably distorted with dark red trails of pure dark side energy slowly converging towards this singular point between the two hands of the slender, possessed human. Right after his declaration of ending the battle, he notices that some of the tendrils of red energy start to veer away and are now going straight towards the gaping mouth of the large Dashad, who is now standing only a few feet away. Cursing to himself for forgetting the abilities of the shadow killers from Urkup to sneak up on force users, he tries to back away to get out of range of whatever this monstrous Dashad was doing, but suddenly found himself moving slower than usual and unable to move efficiently. Rakdahya can be seen focusing intensely as he is having both arms reached out, binding the Lord in place. Confused as to how a mere apprentice could break through his force shield, he recalls that the battle meditation can also strengthen force powers if directed properly. As he thought to himself, and soon after being bombarded with dozens of blaster bolts hitting him from a distance, seemingly about to rip the droid apart with telekinesis from pure rage, he is interrupted by Cyrus, performing a singular overpowering downward strike from above. Blocking with the ethereal blade, the force ritual the Lord was doing before has ceased, and trying to defend against the young Sith's brute strength, who is pushing the lightsaber down hard. The falling avalanche technique, a method used in Gem So, the 5th lightsaber form. Using the wielder's entire physical strength in one singular downward strike to destroy any attempts to block the attack and completely cleave the opponent in half. Although it would have been simple to parry or dodge out of the way, the binding force from the pure blood is making movements difficult to perform. Both blades being locked in a stalemate, the Lord is attempting to concoct a plan to retaliate. From the rear, a stream of blue force lightning starts electrocuting Lord Crawford whilst he's trying to keep Cyrus's red lightsaber from making contact with his shoulder, as the young Sith is still trying to overpower him with that same strike. Isaac had stopped the battle meditation abruptly and shot out several bolts of lightning to attack the distracted Lord. Buckling under the pressure of Cyrus's lightsaber pushing down on him, on top of lightning continuously being shot at him, the lightsaber slowly starts to singe away at the flesh and cloth of the decrepit human as it creeps downward. Tissue, bone and muscle being sliced apart from the red humming blade, slowly moving inch by inch down the shoulder and eventually reaching chest height. He would have pushed back the young apprentice with a force push, but still being electrocuted by Isaac's force lightning. The defenses are spread thin and eventually give way as Cyrus cuts deep all the way to the waist, and the frail human topples over to one side. The body having burn marks all over from the lightning, and with a large, deep, vertical burning gash on the right shoulder that splits the upper torso of the human almost in half. Yellow eyes still blazing in defiance, the Lord tries to mutter something, but light leaves his eyes, and the spectral form of the Sith emerges from the corpse. Silently floating and observing all the onlookers, a sense of dread suddenly engulfs the entire group when a darkened area suddenly appears directly at the altar in the center of the chamber. Soon noticing that even the ghostly figure is looking distressed, they all begin to prepare for the worst. Entirely exhausted and drained from the recently ended battle, they can't imagine how much further they can continue on for, but have a steely resolve to face whatever might come. Slowly, a humanoid figure appears from that darkness at the altar, and Isaac immediately recognizes who it is: the Emperor.